Hello. This video training is for women leaders who work within male dominated industries, and I am so excited to hop into today's lesson. We're talking about the 5 elements of executive presence. So please download your PDF with the 5 tips. There is space on these pages for you to take notes. And I highly encourage you to take notes as we go through. I want you to think of a couple of things as we go through this executive presence training. 1, assess where you are now. We're going to get to that. And just observe the training. Take the training throughout and then go back and do the work. Do the exercises. So executive presence is like any other muscle. The more you engage in it, the more you strengthen it, the stronger it will become. So as we dive into today's lesson, we're going to cover 5 things, and I want to give you the overview as we get started. We're going to talk about self-awareness, as I discussed. It is critical. It's the key to any type of leadership development, is your ability to have a high level of self-awareness. Number 2, we're going to talk about imposter syndrome and self-efficacy. Number 3, we're going to talk about power, how to get comfortable with power, having power, and claiming power. And number 4, we're going to hop into the power of questions, and we will end with the 5th step in executive presence, which is integrity. So, my name is Jacqueline Twillie. For those of you who do not know me, I am the president at ZeroGap.co, and at ZeroGap, we are a leading training and development firm. We work with clients all over the globe, Fortune 500 companies, and we help them to enhance their leadership development skills. So companies engage us, whether it's for a company-wide training, specifically for their employee resource groups, or even for executive coaching and executive leadership team strategy. So that's what we do at ZeroGap. If you want more information, head over to ZeroGap.co. And this is where you will also find your PDF download for today's training. So that will be available for you at ZeroGap.co. So let's dive in. The first step for executive presence is self-awareness. So your self-awareness is what drives your behavior, claiming agency as you lead. So when I say agency is your power, your authority. As you begin to step into your own as a leader, how you command attention is really important. And in order for you to enhance this skill, you need to know where you're starting at now. So think about the type of feedback you receive when you present in a meeting, whether that is via phone, whether it's a Skype style or Zoom style meeting, or in person. Do people respond to you with a lot of follow-up questions? Do you notice that the attention drifts away from you? Do you notice that it's a lot of distraction or maybe even frustration? The reason why it's important to have this awareness of how people are responding to you, because it will allow you to understand where you need to deepen your knowledge and skill set. And so that is the first step. Above all else, you need to know where you stand with executive presence. Now, people say executive presence is like je ne sais quoi. You either have it or you don't. I don't believe that at all, which is why I teach this skill. It is a skill that you can gain, enhance, and learn. So when you walk into a room, you want to be able to read the room. You want to be able to determine your audience if you haven't done that in advance of a meeting, and be able to speak directly to the audience you are engaged with. The next thing that is important with self-assessment of executive presence is your ability to understand your vocabulary level. Now, we all have different levels of vocabulary. However, when you're speaking to different audiences, you need to be able to speak to where they can understand and that where they will be able to take action. Okay? So, as you're going into an audience, if you're in an audience and I'm using this as an example with high school students, you'll want to use words that are on a high school student's level. However, if you're presenting to a board of directors, you need to be able to speak in financial terms. You need to be able to command their attention and speak in a way where they understand. Okay, so for you, the first step is to assess where your current vocabulary skills lie. Do you have a versatile range of vocabulary so that you can speak to an audience over here and an audience over there? And over time, what will happen is, as you begin to increase your awareness, you will also be able to increase that skill of your vocabulary range and be able to speak to a wide and broad audience. So that's number one, self-assessment. Number two, self-efficacy is the antidote to imposter syndrome. Now, I want to know, have you ever felt in a situation where you second-guessed if you were the right person to do something, if you had what it took, or some people even experience imposter syndrome of saying, I don't know what I'm doing, and people will think I'm a fraud, or they will find out that I haven't worked as hard as someone else. So if you've ever experienced any of those things, that is imposter syndrome, and it's fairly common. But there is an antidote to imposter syndrome, and that is self-efficacy. So self-efficacy is the belief in yourself to get something done. Let me give you a practical example of self-efficacy at work. Now, if you're looking at a job description, let's say you're applying for a job, and you read the description and you say, okay, I can do this job because in the past I've done this, and you think a little bit more, you say, oh, okay, in the past I've also done that. Well, what's happening is you are going through your catalog of memory and you're telling yourself, I can do this job, I can apply for this job because I have done things in the past that will allow me to engage in the skill set. Here's the amazing thing. That is self-efficacy at work. That is your belief in yourself to get something done. So, with the belief in yourself to get something done, anytime you have a moment where you want to shrink, where you don't feel as confident, I want you to go through your Rolodex of things that you have done in the past. It might not be that exact thing, but you've done stepping stone items or activities that prove to you that with a little skill, with a little practice, you can achieve that. That is self-efficacy at work. Now, the reason why self-efficacy is the antidote to imposter syndrome and how that fits into this umbrella of executive presence is this. When you walk in a room and you're confident, others will see your confidence or lack of confidence. So whenever you have those moments where you're doubting yourself, it is really important for you to give yourself that boost. Tap into self-efficacy so that you can show up as your most confident version of yourself. Now, as you begin to show up as the most confident version of yourself, other people will believe you, they will be inspired to follow you, and even if they are a little bit shaky or unsure, your confidence will steady the ship, which is why it is so important for you to engage in self-efficacy as an antidote to combating any imposter syndrome that you may feel. So just to recap, our first level of executive presence, we talked about self-awareness and expanding your vocabulary range. Our second step is we talked about imposter syndrome and how self-efficacy is the antidote. And why that matters is because your confidence is contagious or lack thereof. So we're looking to boost your confidence. Now, number 3, get comfortable with power. This training is specifically for women leaders who work within male-dominated industries. And one of the things that we know is that women sometimes shy away from power. And it could be for a variety of reasons. A lot of times in society, we are taught that we should be humble, that we should be quiet, we should just get the work done, keep our head down, and we'll be rewarded for keeping our head down, following the rules, and getting things done. However, as you begin as a leader to step more into your power, you're going to have to get comfortable with breaking out of the norms, which means you can't just keep your head down. You can't just say things and hope that people notice. You're going to have to express yourself. And when you express yourself, one of the fears that comes up often is women will say, well, I don't want to be labeled the B word. I get it. It's one of those situations where it is a double bind. If you're not assertive enough, people are saying you need to be more assertive, you need to have more leadership skills, and if you're too assertive, they can label you as that word. So what is the appropriate balance? This goes back to self-assessment. Step number 1. Know who your audience is and know how to speak to them. So a few months ago, I had a guest on my podcast, and the guest shared with me that women on average use 30,000 words per day to communicate, and men on average use 10,000 words per day to communicate. So instantly what we see there is a gap of 20,000 words from the average of what men are using to communicate and what women are using to communicate. That allows for an opportunity for misinformation, for confusion, and for misunderstanding. So as women begin to increase their executive presence and really get comfortable with power, it's really important to speak clearly and concisely. So before you go into a meeting or before you hop on a phone call, think of the outcome that you want to achieve. So what is it that you're looking to achieve as a result of this conversation or this meeting? Once you get clear on that, the next thing is, how can you deliver this in the most concise manner? Saying exactly what you need to say, nothing more, nothing less. Again, this goes back to step number 1, which is that self-assessment piece. Being able to understand how do you communicate and articulate what you need to say in a manner that inspires others to take action. So that's step number 3, getting comfortable with your power. And when you're comfortable with your power, you're not going to shy away from saying what you need to say. You're just going to go ahead and say it, but you're doing it in a really strategic manner, being clear and concise. So number 4, ask probing questions. When it comes to executive presence, how you show up in the room, what you wear, what you say is important. It is also equally important for you to be able to gather information from others. So the way that you do this is by asking probing questions. Now there are generally 2 types of questions. The first type of question is an open-ended question. Open-ended questions are expansive because they cannot be answered with a yes or no. So open-ended questions allow you to go deeper and get more information. The second type is closed-ended questions. So closed-ended questions are restrictive questions. So restrictive questions, what they do is they box a person in because it only allows them to say yes or no. So think of a conversation you had earlier today where you possibly presented a question to someone else. Was it an open-ended question or a closed-ended question? What I found with a lot of my clients is we typically lean towards closed-ended questions in conversations because we are proving our own point instead of gathering information. Stephen R. Covey says that you should seek first to understand, then be understood. And in your pursuit to understand, then be understood is the art of gathering facts, asking probing questions. So as you're engaged in a conversation, you're owning the room, you're owning your power. One of the things that you can do is take notes when you're in a conversation. So it will prompt you what follow-up questions to ask. This will show the person that you are engaged in the conversation, and it will also let them know that you're paying attention. Again, we're looking to increase your executive presence. So the last step that we're going to cover today in our executive presence series is integrity is your cornerstone. Now, we start with self-assessment, and here we are on step number 5, integrity. Integrity is what you say and do when no one is watching. It's doing the right thing even though no one will know if you're doing it or not. So here's the key. With the integrity piece, we know that it is so simple for us to stick to our values when our values are in front of us every day. So the things that you value as a leader, the things that your company values as a whole, you should be reviewing those values on a daily basis. So for instance, if creativity is your value, then that's something you should be looking at every day. And it should be a theme throughout all you do is creativity. If honesty is a part of your core values, that is a part of your integrity blueprint, and that should be seen throughout everything you do, so on and so forth. So if you don't have a list of your personal values that you deeply resonate with, I encourage you to jot those down, to really think about what values are most important to you. And if your company has values, do you know those off the top of your head? If you don't, that is something that you need to learn and start to really memorize and thread into the fabric of all of your decisions day in and day out. So let me recap for you all what we covered today, and I want to remind you that you can download your PDF from ZeroGap.co. Self-awareness drives behavior, and you can check out that training. All right. My name is Jacqueline Twillie. I'm president at ZeroGap.co. It has been my absolute pleasure to bring you this executive presence training today. So until next time, continue to emulate excellence and eliminate excuses. Yeah. Yes, it was good training.